Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight we want to begin this evening with a quiz. Quick, what does the Democratic Party stand for? That used to be an easy question to answer. For 100 years, the answer was higher wages and better benefits. That was back when the Democratic Party was run by people who worked for a living. They cared about how much voters got paid at the end of the week. But that's not a subject that interests the decadent rich very much. The private equity billionaires who fund today's Democratic Party could care less about other people's wages. What they care about most, other than making themselves even richer, is feeling virtuous, feeling like deeply good people, much better than you are. And that's why they're so committed to something called diversity, a concept that nobody is willing to explain, but that nonetheless we must celebrate enthusiastically and perpetually. Listen to Nancy Pelosi explain.
Our diversity is our strength.
Diversity is our strength.
Our diversity is our strength.
I always say the diversity is our strength. And I say to the caucus, our diversity is our strength. And the fact is that our diversity is our strength.
Okay, got it? Diversity is our strength. They've made that part crystal clear. What is still unclear is what exactly diversity is. What is it? Well, for one thing, diversity is the reason that Alison Jaslow was forced to resign her job in disgrace. Until 24 hours ago, Jaslow was the executive director of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And then yesterday, she quit in tears. She asked her colleagues to forgive her as she packed her things. What did Jaslow do wrong? Well, nothing, actually. She didn't hurt anyone. She didn't say anything awful. She didn't mismanage the office. Nobody claims she did. Jaslow's only sin was having the wrong skin color. On Sunday, two congressional Democrats, Vicente Gonzalez and Philemon Vela, demanded that Jaslow be fired from her job and replaced by a person of a different hue. Not a more competent person. They didn't mention that. That's irrelevant. Just a different colored person. That's all that mattered to them. So they forced a person out of her job for having the wrong genes. Apparently, none of this set off any alarm bells over at Democratic Party HQ. Apparently, nobody could think of any other time in history where something like this had happened. It didn't seem ominous to them or creepy or racist. It just seemed like diversity, which we must celebrate because it's our strength. That actually happened. The Democratic Party has gone insane. Now, you may think you already knew that, but even if you think you knew it, it's hard to appreciate just how real it is, just how crazy the party has become. The party of ordinary Americans has become a poisonous identity cult obsessed with questions of racial purity. It's terrifying, but it's entirely real. How real is it? Well, Al Sharpton is now a hero on the left. That kind of sums it up. For 40 years, Sharpton chased one hustle after another: race pimp, FBI informant, corporate shakedown artist, tax cheat. If you'd told Al Sharpton in 1995 that someday he'd be the moral conscience of the Democratic Party, he would have laughed in your face. And yet here we are. And here he is sermonizing on MSNBC.
This is race baiting at its best. This is Donald Trump playing the race card, and it is a shame and it is a sham. He's playing a race baiting crowd, but he's playing a race divisive card. He should not continue to try and sell this racist behavior to try and make the country more divided for his own political gain.
There you have it. Al Sharpton, the man who once attacked Jews and crackers as parasites, bemoaning our divided nation. Hilarious. But leading Democrats don't appear to get the joke. Just today, poor old Joe Biden tweeted this, quote, "The Reverend Al is a champion in the fight for civil rights." Sure, if the fight for civil rights is a euphemism for buying more $10,000 suits, in which case Al Sharpton is a legitimate hero in that fight. The Democratic candidates seem to think he really is. Watch them kiss his ring at an event this spring.
The head of NAN, who is truly right now the steward of the ongoing movement for civil rights and justice in our country, and that's the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Being on the forefront in the fight against racism and for social justice. Al, thank you so much for all that you're doing.
I know that Reverend Sharpton takes this platform seriously. This is not the place for talk. This is the place for action.
People like Reverend Sharpton, who has never stopped fighting for social justice.
And Rev, I cannot thank you enough for your years of friendship, your years of leadership.
I want to say to Reverend Al Sharpton, thank you for leading. Thank you for speaking out. Thank you for showing us a way.
There you have it. The modern Democratic Party so distorted by race guilt that Al Sharpton seems like a moral leader. This is nuts. It's also a recipe for an electoral wipeout. There's a lot about the Democratic Party's economic platform that ordinary voters might like, but this kind of garbage, it's a deal killer, and not just with conservative white voters. No normal person of any color will vote for stuff like this. Whatever his many faults, former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel does understand that. This week, Emanuel published a memo aimed at the party's presidential candidates. He begged them to return to reality immediately. Here's part of it, quote, "Before our party promises health care coverage to undocumented immigrants, a position not even Ted Kennedy took, let's help the more than 30 million Americans who are a single illness away from financial ruin. Before we start worrying about whether the Boston Marathon bomber can vote, let's stop states that are actively trying to curtail voting rights of citizens. And before we promise a guaranteed minimum income to healthy adults who prefer to stay home and play video games, let's increase the minimum wage and the earned income tax credit to the benefit of the millions of people who still work hard and live near poverty." End quote. There were times in the memo that Emanuel sounded like Donald Trump in 2016. For example, quote, "American taxpayers have spent the last 20 years, both in blood and treasure, building roads, schools, and hospitals in Iraq and Afghanistan. All the while, American wages continue to stagnate. People are tired of being treated as chumps. It's time to invest in America again." It goes on like this. Emanuel's memo is full of good advice, and not just good advice for Democrats. The memo isn't right about everything, obviously, but at least it focuses on the right things. Most Americans actually aren't obsessed with race. They don't want to memorize 60 new genders. There aren't 60 new genders. There are 2 genders, and everyone knows it. They don't think it's their duty to give American citizenship to everyone on the planet, along with health care. Come on. Instead, they have a more basic hope, and it's the hope of people everywhere. They want to feel that the country they were born in is their home. They want leaders who put their interests first, leaders who actually care about their well-being. And yet, weirdly, for decades, Washington has refused to supply leaders like that. That's why Donald Trump won in 2016. It's why he could very easily win again in 2020. Because in the end, Americans will always pick a flawed leader over a leader who openly hates them, every single time.